Hi there, this is Machine Pun Kelly. Thanks for watching. Today I want to talk to you about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Donald Trump and his administration have thrown out all sorts of excuses to justify the illegal renditioning of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to a prison in El Salvador. We need to have a serious conversation about the legality of that. Let's clear up a big point first. Abrego Garcia wasn't just deported, he was renditioned. Deportation means sending someone back to their country, free to walk around. Rendition is when the U.S. ships someone to a foreign prison, like El Salvador's brutal CCOT, and pays to keep them locked up to dodge American laws like due process. That's exactly what happened here, tied to a shady $6 million deal with El Salvador. It didn't just happen to Abrego Garcia. It happened to all 300 of Trump's victims that are currently in CCOT. And that brings us to the heart of this mess. Every single person in the United States, citizen or not, deserves due process. The Fifth Amendment of the Constitution says, "No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law." Let's consider the wording. First, it says person, not citizen. The Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly, even saying in the case Langmay Ma v. Barber, 1958, that it applies to persons who entered the country illegally. If you break down the phrase due process, it means there is a process which is due. There are a set series of legal requirements for the government to act as established by law. The government has to follow the law, just like us. If the rules don't apply to everyone, they don't apply to anyone, not even the people enforcing them. That's the heart of our Constitution and what makes us free. So, even if Trump's accusations about Abrego Garcia are true, they still need to be proven in court. Shipping him off to a prison in El Salvador is illegal, period. But let's not stop there. Let's tear into the evidence the government's peddling and see if it holds up. Spoiler alert, it's a pile of lies, cherry-picking, half-truths, and straight-up fallacies. Trump and his crew love what I call a fallacy mousetrap. I mean one of those gum traps, not a spring trap. They hit you with a barrage of lies, half-truths, and cherry-picked details, all set up to trap you if you bite. Then you get stuck. The cheese is the most egregious argument meant to suck you in. If you argue the cheese, they pivot to other accusations to wear you down. For example, here the cheese is due process. The trap is the charges of MS-13, human trafficking, terrorism, and domestic abuse. And then you get stuck in an hours-long argument about the details of the case, but are never able to eat the cheese of the essential argument. The trick to addressing the trap is you have to degum the trap, then eat the cheese. Here, I'll look at each charge, debunk it, and then show how due process was ignored. And I'll do it all in less than 15 minutes. So let's degum this bad boy. He was here illegally. Sure, Abrego Garcia crossed the border illegally back in 2011, but by the time he was renditioned in 2025, he was here legally. He got nabbed by ICE in 2019, and an immigration judge granted him withholding of removal status. Boom, that meant he could live and work in the U.S. legally. It really is that simple. He had to check in with ICE every year, and he did, like clockwork. Each check-in included a criminal record review, and guess what? Nothing ever came up. Here's the kicker. His withholding of removal was granted under Trump's first administration, and so was his first ICE check-in. Fact: when he was renditioned in 2025, Abrego Garcia was legally living here, working as an apprenticed sheet metal worker and union member. There were 2 removal orders against him. This one's been floating around a lot, but it's nonsense. There was never a removal order issued against Abrego Garcia. I dug for it. Couldn't find one. When I asked Grok, it came up empty too, even when I pushed hard. Here's where the confusion might come from. First, when he entered in 2011, he might have been caught by Border Patrol, processed, and given a notice to appear for removal proceedings. That's not a removal order, even if he skipped the hearing. There was also a bond hearing where a judge decided he should stay in custody until his 2019 immigration hearing, but no removal order was ever issued. Some folks might be mixing these up. Fact: there's zero evidence Abrego Garcia ever had a removal order against him. The allegation that Abrego Garcia is a gang member stemmed from a 2019 arrest. Let's go over the facts. In 2018, while looking for day work at Home Depot, Abrego Garcia and 3 other migrants were picked up by the local police for vagrancy. 2 of them rolled plastic bottles alleged to have contained marijuana under a car. None of the 4 were ever charged with a crime or gang membership. However, 4 hours later, a police officer alleged in a gang field interview sheet that he had a confidential informant who told him that Abrego Garcia was a Westerns clique with the rank of Chequeo. The officer alleged that the bull's hat was gang attire, and Abrego Garcia had rolls of money covering the eyes, ears, and mouth of the U.S. presidents on the bills, which was an indication of gang membership. A bond judge, relying exclusively on the officer's word that Abrego Garcia was a gang member, ordered that Abrego Garcia be held without bail until his immigration hearing. This decision has falsely been used as proof by the Trump administration that Abrego Garcia is a member of MS-13 and a justification for his removal. Here are a few things you need to know about the so-called evidence. It was a bond hearing, not a removal order. It is double hearsay evidence. The officer was later fired and convicted of a felony. The confidential informant was never identified. The Western clique operates in New York, where Abrego Garcia has never been. The rank of Checo means recruited, not yet initiated, which would indicate that Abrego Garcia wasn't even really an actual member. People with rolls of money aren't usually looking for day work. Money gets spent, so possession of such money wouldn't be proof he's the one who covered the president's eyes and mouths anyway. Basing gang membership on clothing or cash is an association fallacy, which means that because all A is B doesn't equate to all B is A. For example, all apples are fruits, but all fruits aren't apples. Even if his hat is consistent with gang members, that doesn't mean wearing one makes him a gang member. He could just be a Bulls fan. Neither Abrego Garcia nor anyone he is associated with has ever been charged with or convicted of a gang-related crime, including the ones he was picked up with. The immigration judge said it didn't meet the preponderance of the evidence standard, which means that it wasn't more likely to be true than not true, a lower standard than in a criminal court. Imagine shipping someone off to die in a foreign prison based on a hat, cash, and the trust me bro of a felonious cop after they were tried and acquitted. That's what the Trump administration is doing. Even if Abrego Garcia was in MS-13, that doesn't mean ICE can just ship him off. Due process still applies. And to be clear, the evidence doesn't show he has ever been associated with them. Under U.S. law, to remove him, ICE would need to reopen his 2019 case or start a new one. An immigration judge from the Executive Office for Immigration Review would hear it, and ICE would have to prove one of 2 things. Before his withholding of removal was granted, he either committed a serious crime or persecuted people in El Salvador, and nobody knew about it, or after getting it, he's a danger to the community. This would require specific evidence of acts showing he's a danger. Either way, ICE needs new evidence, not a rehash of old evidence, and it has to show actual crimes, not just affiliations. None of that happened. None of this has even been alleged in court, let alone proven. Plus, if they tried and he lost, he'd still get an appeal. Due process did not happen. Facts. There's no new evidence tying Abrego Garcia to MS-13, and even if there were, it'd need to show specific crimes with full due process, including a defense and appeal rights. Here, Abrego Garcia was pulled over swerving between lanes. The officer noticed 8 passengers in his car, none with baggage, and got suspicious. Human traffickers sometimes hold on to luggage to control people, so it raised a red flag. The officer also thought Abrego Garcia was playing dumb with his English, which added to the vibe. In fairness, it sounds like the cop was acting in good faith. He called ICE, but they told him to let everyone go. That suggests ICE didn't see enough to hold Abrego Garcia. Legally, that's where the trail ends. There's no public evidence this stop led to his rendition. Abrego Garcia's family says he was just driving construction workers between job sites, which makes total sense. Why did the passengers give his address as theirs? Could be their undocumented workers or any number of other reasons. This brings us back to the association fallacy. Just because human traffickers do something doesn't mean everyone doing it is a trafficker. Due process says ICE would need to prove trafficking in court with evidence, and Abrego Garcia would get a chance to appeal. This didn't even make it past an ICE phone call. Plus, there's no public record showing this stop was why he was renditioned, so it feels like a post hoc justification. Fact: Abrego Garcia was never proven or even formally accused of human trafficking in court. There was no indication that they were even cognizant of these charges when they deported him, and it's an entirely post hoc justification. He's a terrorist. The logic here is that since he's MS-13, and MS-13 has been designated a terrorist organization, he is a terrorist. The logic is deeply flawed and based upon the recent designation of MS-13 as a terrorist group. This reminds me of an old joke where a man asks his genie to make him a sandwich, and the genie says, "Poof, you're a sandwich," and turns him into a sandwich. Furthermore, Abrego Garcia's social media shows zero political anything. No terrorist vibes here. So why push this terrorist label? Because it could justify extreme measures like rendition without a hearing. However, by law, 8 U.S.C. Paragraph 1227A4B, rendition for terrorist activities requires proof of actual involvement, not just gang ties. That proof needs a court hearing. No hearing happened. No terrorist acts by Abrego Garcia or even MS-13 have ever been alleged, much less proven. Furthermore, this terrorist talk only popped up after his rendition, smelling like yet another post hoc excuse. Fact: he is not a member of MS-13, which is not a terrorist organization, and he's not even a political person based on his social media. He's a wife beater. The last accusation is that Abrego Garcia is a wife beater. It's based on a 2021 domestic violence allegation that's got some truth, but was twisted to justify his illegal rendition. In May 2021, Jennifer Vasquez Sura, his wife, filed for a temporary protective order in Prince George's County, Maryland. Court papers claim Abrego Garcia punched and scratched her eye, causing bleeding, ripped her shirt and shorts, and grabbed her arm, leaving bruises. She also mentioned 2020 incidents, like being hit with a work boot and getting a black eye. She said she was afraid to be close to him and had photos and videos of bruises, though those aren't public. But that's not the whole story. Vasquez Sura didn't show up to the final hearing in June 2021, so the case was dismissed and no permanent order was issued. In April 2025, she explained,
"After surviving domestic violence in a previous relationship, I acted out of caution following a disagreement with Kilmar by seeking a civil protective order in case things escalated. Things did not escalate, and I decided not to follow through with the civil court process. We worked through the situation privately as a family, including by going to counseling. Our marriage only grew stronger in the years that followed. Kilmar has always been a loving partner and father, and I will continue to stand by him and demand justice."
Their reconciliation and zero criminal charges show this isn't black and white. Domestic violence allegations are dead serious and shouldn't be brushed off, but this resolved civil case doesn't justify ICE's move. In April 2025, DHS posted those 2021 court docs on X, doxing Vasquez Sura's private details in order to paint Abrego Garcia as a violent thug. Pairing this with unproven MS-13 claims, it's pure political smoke to dodge the real issue. ICE broke a 2019 court order by renditioning him to El Salvador's brutal Secot prison, where he's in serious danger. Fact: the 2021 domestic violence allegations, while serious, were resolved privately, led to no criminal charges, and have nothing to do with his 2019 withholding of removal order. Using them to justify his rendition is a blatant abuse of power. there's nothing we can do. The Trump administration's response to a unanimous Supreme Court ruling on Abrego Garcia's illegal rendition is straight-up defiance, a middle finger to the rule of law, packed with shady claims and zero action. On April 10, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that Trump's team must facilitate Abrego Garcia's return after his unlawful deportation to El Salvador on March 15, 2025. It backed U.S. District Judge Paula Sheenis's order, which said ICE violated a 2019 ruling barring his removal due to a clear probability of future persecution by gangs. The court demanded his due process rights be restored. But instead of stepping up, the administration is splitting hairs, saying facilitate only means clearing vague domestic obstacles. In an April 13, 2025 filing, ICE's Evan Katz claimed Abrego Garcia is no longer eligible for withholding of removal because of MS-13 ties, a move that's likely illegal since it skips the required court hearing. Sheenis, on April 15, 2025, called their updates of little value, and the Fourth Circuit's April 17 ruling slammed their stance as shocking to due process. Their helpless act falls apart with a screaming catch-22. They claim his return is up to El Salvador, with Attorney General Pam Bondi and El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele in an April 14, 2025 Oval Office meeting, calling him a terrorist too dangerous to release. But the U.S.-El Salvador Extradition Treaty lets the U.S. request his return for prosecution if he's really MS-13. No request has been made, probably because their evidence, a Chicago Bulls hat, a roll of cash, and the double hearsay testimony of a felonious cop already got laughed out of court in 2019. This catch-22 lays it bare. They hype him as a dangerous criminal to justify renditioning him, won't validate extradition, admitting their claims are too weak for a judge. Instead of acting, they're stonewalling. They've dodged Sheenis's orders for depositions by April 23, 2025, and haven't touched their $6 million deportation deal with El Salvador to push for his release. His isn't just defiance, it's a constitutional crisis, as scholars like Kim Whale point out, because it spits in the face of the judiciary's power to enforce due process. Fact, the Supreme Court unanimously ordered Trump's team to bring Abrego Garcia back, but their inaction and flimsy excuses break the law. One thing that I find interesting is that with all of this, the Trump administration makes one argument to the public and another to the courts. That means they know they're lying. At some point, we need to acknowledge that this is deliberate, and if they are deliberately sending people to suffer and die in an El Salvadoran prison, they are evil. I'm Machine Pun Kelly, aka MPK, and once again, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to click like and subscribe.